we haven't seen it yet. How closely this fused to James Tynan's graphic novel, which they or miniseries, which they say inspired by.
So I can't answer that. We tried to. So we made a couple. I'll just say it because I don't care. The biggest thing is we decided to not have multiple dimensions. Early on, we made the decision to just say that in this continuity, Gotham and New York both exist in the same world, and the Turtles are coming to Gotham. The idea was that, Batman and Superman had to meet for the first time, too. They didn't have to go through dimensions to do it. So in this story, it's more of an old-school crossover where it's just the Ninja Turtles and Batman could have met before, but this is just the first time they are meeting. So if you're familiar with the comic, taking interdimensional travel and portals out of the story means you have to change the story a lot. Because the idea of interdimensional travel and alternate dimensions is sort of the MacGuffin of the comic. And so once we made that decision, what I tried to do was stick to the general structure and tone of the comic as much as I could with the changes we would have to make. And specifically, I tried to find specific scenes from the comic that I thought would work really well in a moving animated medium and tried to get them in verbatim. So there are the overall general structure of the movie is very similar to the comic, even though we had to change a lot of the details. And then there are specific scenes and moments lifted directly from the comic, which I'm really, really glad we were able to get in because the comic is really great.
So, since you're making a new iteration of Turtles, they can vary. They can be lighthearted from the 90s, they can be the Mirage. Nickelodeon has a new series. So in your depiction of the Turtles, was there anything you geared towards?
Yeah, so I think with a project like this, there's been so many, there's been funny versions of the Turtles and dark versions of the Turtles, and there's been funny versions of Batman and dark versions of Batman, and so you sort of have to decide what's going to be the best Turtles to bounce off the best Batman. Like, we want Batman to be a little more serious than the Turtles so that there's contrast, but we want the Turtles to be a little more serious than they were in, say, the 80s cartoon so that they fit in this world with Batman. It doesn't feel like they're from a different cartoon. So I would say probably the biggest inspiration tonally for the Ninja Turtles was the live-action Ninja Turtles movies. Just in the sort of like they are pretty good. The first two live act. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. The puppet ones, the ones where they are puppets. Our main inspiration. I legitimately forgot that there were two more live action Ninja Turtles movies. Apologies to my friend who directed one of those. You can cut that part out. But yeah, the puppet ones, the one with the Henson turtle suits, because those were a really good thing for us to look at because the turtles in those movies, especially the first one, Secret of the Ooze is goofier. But the first live-action Ninja Turtles movie made in the late 80s, I forget the exact year, or early 90s, that was a good jumping-off point because in that movie, the Turtles themselves are very goofy, but the movie takes the world relatively seriously. You're actually worried that Shredder might kill them, and we wanted that. We wanted a world where we wanted a Turtles where they are very silly, and they are teenagers, and they're making jokes, and certainly Batman reacts to them as a little too goofy and not taking things seriously, but they live in a serious world. They're making jokes in a serious world. Also, the Turtles in the Michael Bay movies are themselves animated, so I was referencing the one where they are real puppets.
No, that's a good point. There's CG in the second. So, and you said you liked the original comics, so can you share like what was the favorite moment that you were like? You wouldn't have had to fall on your sword for it, but like you're super happy you were able to.
It was two Michelangelo moments that are pretty close to each other. It was Michelangelo riding on top of the T-Rex in the Batcave, and Michelangelo running into Alfred on his skateboard. Were the two things that I was like, yeah, you can't tell me Michelangelo is in Gotham and not have him ride on a T-Rex and run into Alfred on a skateboard. Those were two moments for the comic I would have been pretty bummed out not to get to use. There's also one really there's just one line where I think Raphael refers to Batman as a guy in a Dracula costume, and Donatello says, Dracula costume? What Dracula movies are you watching? And I really, really wanted to get that in there, because I see people a lot of times refer to Batman in like a comedic shorthand for Batman is running around in a Dracula costume, and I have also always thought that is really not what he's doing.
Yeah. did you get to meet James?
I did actually. The one really cool thing about this is me and James Tynan have a bunch of mutual friends in common, and we had actually met once or twice before, very casually, and basically because I've been doing this project, now we're friends. Because then when our mutual friend was like, oh, Marley, James, you guys have stuff in common, and we really did, and so we started talking when we would be at the same parties, and now James is a friend of mine, and he's really great, and I hope that he likes the movie.
You want it?
Is there any like scene that you wanted in the film, but just couldn't make it for some reason?
Yes, I wanted Batman to throw a pizza at Shredder's face, and there was no godly reason on this earth to justify that actually happening. So that I can tell you, at no point in this movie does Batman throw a pizza at Shredder, and I would have liked to have had a reason to do that, but there is absolutely no reason for that to happen, so it does not happen.
Find it for the sequel.
Yes, exactly. That was too silly even for... There's some silly moments in this movie, but I could not justify something that silly. I know, right?
Even though it's based on somewhat on a pre-existing comic book, the Turtles are a property not owned by Warner Brothers.
Yes.
So, were there restrictions? Was there somebody taking an eye on, like, the Turtles wouldn't do this, or?
It wasn't restrictions like that. I mean, Nickelodeon and Warner Brothers Animation worked together on this, so we were getting notes and feedback from Nickelodeon executives, as well as Warner Brothers executives, as well as DC people like Mike Carlin would weigh in. So it was honestly because even though DC and Warner Brothers are like sister companies, there is still sort of separate management. So honestly, working with the Ninja Turtles felt very much like working with Batman, where we had creative freedom to do what we wanted, but we had the caretakers of these properties telling us, like, weighing in, being like, well, here's how we do this, or here's how this usually works, or like, this is the way we like to treat the Turtle Van, stuff like that. So it definitely there weren't like rules, you can't do this. It was in the same way that DC sometimes is like, oh, it'd be cool if you used this costume for Batman because we haven't done that in a while, or something like that. The Nickelodeon people had opinions about stuff like which version of the Turtle Van we used, or things like that. But it wasn't like a list of no-nos or anything. And I think people will see, this is except for maybe the Michael Bay movies, which I am not super familiar with, I think this is the most violent movie the Turtles have been in some time.
Really?
And Nickelodeon was totally on board with all of that. I think the movie's PG-13, but it's a pretty harsh PG-13 in terms of violence.
They have kind of pushed that.
Yeah.
In the animated.
And there wasn't any pushback on that. I think that's part of the nice thing about us creating a new version of the Turtles with a very different visual design. Like it's very clear this isn't the Saturday morning cartoon show version of these Turtles. So that was great. And working with Nickelodeon was really, really great. I'd have to say that either way, but it was. It was their executives really know the Turtles.
Would you like to see the TMNT and Batman try to fight? Is there a villain that you would like them to take on?
Oh yeah, for sure. If we got to do another one, Bebop, mostly Turtle villains. This movie is mostly Batman villains. It really is the Turtles going into Batman's world and meeting mostly Batman people. So if we got to do another one, I'd love to do it the other way and bring in more Turtles villains. I'd love to use Bebop and Rocksteady. I'd love to use Krang. We actually took Casey Jones out. Casey Jones is in the comic, but he's not in our movie, and it was a bummer to have to do that because I like Casey Jones a lot. It would be really fun for Casey Jones to see all this stuff in Batman's cave and be really, really jealous that he doesn't have anything. Just run around with a hockey stick. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'd love to write the scene when Casey Jones realizes how underfunded he is compared to Batman.
I noticed Baron Vaughn, voices Donatello. He worked with you or worked on your other show, Right Now Kapow.
Yeah.
So I was curious if you are close or did you know he was writing for him?
Yes, I can answer that. Yeah, Baron, I did stand-up comedy back in Boston, and Baron was doing stand-up in Boston and New York, so I've known him since then, back in like 2004, 2005. And so when I did my sketch show Right Now Kapow, we cast Baron as one of the main characters. I love working with Baron. He's a really, really amazing, talented comedic actor, and I had a list of actors I was going to recommend for the various turtles, and Baron was absolutely on my list for Donatello. And I go into the room, and we're about to have our first meeting, and Ben Jones, the producer, goes, "So I was thinking for Donatello, maybe like Baron Vaughn or someone like that." And I was like, "You're not going to believe that I already have that written down, but I do." So I was going to push for Baron anyway, but I didn't even have to because everyone was already on board with him being a really perfect casting choice for Donatello. And he was already very successful when we cast him, but since we cast it 2 years ago, he's obviously just taken off even more since then. So I'm really glad that we have him in the movie. It's probably good. There's only so many questions.
Okay, if they made a toy line out of this, which toy would you have to have?
Oh, Donatello. Donatello was always my favorite turtle.
Why is that?
I guess. I mean, it had to be because he was the smart one, but also purple was my favorite color anyway. So I think it was the fact that the smart one then also was wearing purple. The bow staff became my favorite ninja weapon, but that was definitely because Donatello was my favorite, because no one in their right mind would just like a bow staff for no reason. It's objectively the worst ninja weapon. Sorry, Donatello, my favorite Ninja Turtle.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank all of you.